There are questions that sound like prayer, and there are questions that sound like hunger. In every age, the world builds towers of certainty, scriptures stacked like stones, rituals repeated like footsteps in a never ending corridor, crowns polished until they reflect the sky but never reflect the self. Yet beneath all that order, a quieter truth keeps breathing. The human heart does not want information, it wants peace. And when peace does not arrive, even kings begin to tremble inside their thrones. There was a king, learned, victorious, surrounded by ministers and scholars, surrounded by applause. But at night, when the lamps dimmed, the palace became a cage. He had everything, and still something was missing. So he did what the powerful always do when they feel powerless. He summoned wisdom. He called the priests. They offered hymns. He called the scholars. They offered arguments. He called the ascetics. They offered renunciation. But the king's mind remained a battlefield. Then one evening, a whisper arrived like a crack in the marble. A wandering one has been seen beyond the city limits. A strange sage, laughing like a child, silent like a mountain, unbound by rules, unafraid of judgment. They said his name softly, as if the name itself might burn the tongue. Dattatreya. The king rode out, not with an army, but with doubt, because doubt is the first real prayer. He found him where the world thins out, not in a temple, not in an ashram, not behind walls or disciples. He was seated beneath the open sky, as if the sky was his roof and his scripture. Matted hair, eyes like still water, a smile that did not belong to society. He looked like someone who had stepped out of time and forgotten to step back in. The king approached with the heavy dignity of power and the invisible fear of a man who knows power cannot save him from himself. "Are you Dattatreya?" the king asked. The sage did not bow. He did not rise. He did not flatter. He simply looked at the king the way fire looks at wood, without hatred, without hunger. The king swallowed his pride. "I have come for wisdom." Dattatreya's smile deepened, not mocking, just knowing. "Wisdom is not something you collect," he said softly. "It is something you become empty enough to receive." Silence returned, vast and uncomfortable. Then the king asked the question that held his entire empire in its palm. "Who is your guru?" Dattatreya's gaze lifted, as if he was listening to the air. Then he answered, with a calm that felt like thunder, "I have 24. The king blinked. His ministers frowned. His mind searched for names, lineages, titles, rituals. 24 gurus? The king repeated. Where are they? What are their schools, their scriptures? Dattatreya's voice did not change. They are here, He touched the earth beside him. He gestured to the wind. He glanced at the river's shimmer. He watched a bird cross the sky like a moving mantra. The king stared, because the king had been trained to believe wisdom wears a robe and speaks in Sanskrit. Dattatreya was about to teach him a far older language, the language of life. First, the earth, Dattatreya said. The king looked down, confused. Dattatreya's palm pressed the soil as if greeting an old friend. People step on her, he whispered. Cut her, dig her, burn her, and still she gives. The earth does not scream at the plow. It does not curse the storm. It absorbs insult, transforms it, and returns harvest. From the earth, he said, I learned patience. Not the patience of helplessness, but the patience of power that does not need to prove itself. The king's throat tightened. He had built his reign on proving. Dattatreya continued, when you become like earth, you do not beg the world for respect. You simply remain, and your remaining becomes your teaching. Second, the wind. The wind touched the king's face and left, without permission, without apology. It enters palaces and huts alike, Dattatreya said. It touches the pure and the impure, and it remains untouched. The king frowned. How can something touch filth and not become filthy? Dattatreya's eyes softened. Because it does not cling. And then, like a blade wrapped in velvet, attachment is not love. Attachment is hunger disguised as devotion. The wind moved on. So I learned, Dattatreya said, to pass through experiences without building prisons out of them. The king's mind flashed with memories, grudges, desires, victories. So many prisons. Third, fire. Dattatreya watched a small flame dance in the dry grass. Fire consumes, he said, and in consuming, it transforms. The king remembered sacrificial fires, offerings, rules, but Dattatreya spoke of something harsher, something intimate. Fire teaches this, he said quietly. Whatever you feed grows. Feed anger, it becomes an inferno. Feed fear, it becomes your God. Feed truth, it burns your illusions. He looked at the king. Let truth hurt you. It is a holy wound. It heals you by destroying what was false. The king exhaled, slow, like a man hearing his own sentence and his own salvation in the same breath. Fourth, water. They walked closer to the river. Moonlight trembled on its surface. Water accepts every shape, Dattatreya said. Yet, it is never trapped by the shape. It becomes cloud. It becomes rain. It becomes ocean. It becomes the tear that no one sees. Water teaches surrender, he said, but not surrender as defeat, surrender as intelligence. The king listened. When you stop resisting the truth of what is, Dattatreya continued, you stop wasting your life in denial. The river kept moving. Flow, he whispered, even through pain, especially through pain. Fifth, the sky. He looked up and the king followed. The sky held everything and argued with nothing. Clouds come, Dattatreya said. Clouds go. Storms arrive like rage and leave like regret. But the sky remains. He turned to the king. Be the sky, not the weather. The king's eyes widened. Your mind is weather, Dattatreya said. Your awareness is the sky. A silence fell, not empty, but full. For the first time in years, the king felt something that was not a thought, a space. The king whispered, these are not gurus, these are things. Dattatreya's voice did not harden. Your pride wants a human guru, he said, because a human guru can be possessed, worshipped, argued with, blamed. He smiled again. But life cannot be possessed. He walked, and the king followed, as if following a lantern through fog. Come, Dattatreya said, and meet the teachers society ignores. A flame glowed in the dark, and a moth circled it like a devotee around a shrine. It grew closer, closer, closer. Then in a flash, it was gone. Dattatreya spoke softly, as if speaking to a grieving heart. The moth is destroyed by beauty, he said. The king shivered. Desire is not evil, Dattatreya continued. But uncontrolled desire is a suicide with a sweet face. He stared into the flame. How many men, he asked, have flown into their own ruin because they could not resist what glittered? The king did not answer. He had his own glitter. In the woods, they heard it before they saw it. A deer, motionless, listening to a distant song. Hunters approached, silent, patient. The deer did not flee, not because it was brave, because it was enchanted. Then the rope tightened. Dattatreya's voice was a knife. The deer dies because it cannot stop listening. The king frowned. Listening is a virtue. Yes, Dattatreya said, until it becomes obsession. And then gently, be careful what you let into your mind. Some sounds are traps. The king thought of praise, the intoxicating music of approval. He swallowed hard. They stood near the river again. A fisherman's line cut the water, patient. A fish rose, hungry for the bait. it bit. The hook answered. Dattatreya's voice was almost a whisper now. The fish is captured by taste, he said. One moment of craving and freedom is gone. He glanced at the king. Craving is quick. Consequences are patient. The king's gaze lowered. He knew the taste of power. He knew how it hooks. In a clearing, an elephant stood, massive, proud, unafraid. Hunters did not fight it. They tempted it. A trained female elephant was sent, perfumed, adorned. The bull elephant moved forward, intoxicated by longing. And as it stepped into the trap, the earth swallowed its freedom. Dattatreya said, even the strongest fall when lust takes the throne. The king's face tightened. Dattatreya did not shame him. He simply stated the law of the inner world. Strength without mastery, he said, is just a larger cage. A bee moved from flower to flower, collecting nectar drop by drop. It did not destroy the flower. It took only what it needed. Dattatreya said, from the bee, I learned moderation. Take what nourishes you, not what inflates you. The king nodded, finally something that sounded practical. But then Dattatreya's eyes sharpened. And from the honey-gatherer, he continued, I learned something darker. Men wait until the hive is full. Then they steal everything in one raid. They burn the bees, break the comb, take the treasure. This is the world, Dattatreya said. It waits for your life to fill with sweetness. Then it comes with fire. The king's breath caught. So do not build your happiness in things that can be stolen, Dattatreya whispered. Build it in what cannot be taken. They saw it in the shade, a python, still, patient, not chasing anything. It waited, and when food came near, it took it. When food did not come, it remained. The king scoffed. That is laziness. Dattatreya smiled, not amused, just compassionate. Not laziness, he said. Freedom from compulsive hunger. He looked at the king with a softness that felt like a mirror. You chase because you are afraid. Afraid you will not have enough. Afraid you will not be enough. Silence. The python teaches, Dattatreya said, that life can be received, not hunted, when you stop treating existence like an enemy. The king stared at his own hands, hands that had always been reaching. They reached the sea by dawn. The ocean stretched endlessly, indifferent to praise, indifferent to insult. Rivers poured into it, carrying mud, poison, flowers, ashes. The ocean did not reject. It absorbed. Storms raged, winds attacked, ships broke. Still, the ocean remained ocean. Dattatreya spoke like a man speaking to his own soul. From the ocean, I learned depth, he said. Do not become shallow enough to be disturbed by every wave. The king watched the waves collapse and return. If you want peace, Dattatreya whispered, be vast. That night the moon rose. It seemed to wax and wane, to grow and shrink. But Dattatreya said, the moon does not truly change. It only appears to change. He looked at the king. Your essence does not change. Your roles change. Your moods change. Your body changes. The king listened, almost afraid. But you, Dattatreya said, the watcher behind it all, remain. A pause. You are not your crown, he continued. You are not your shame. You are not even your story. The king's eyes filled with something he did not understand yet. Relief. The king assumed the teaching would remain in forests and skies, but Dattatreya walked into the city, into its perfume, into its noise, into its judgment. There he met a courtesan, adorned, desired, condemned, misunderstood. She sat alone after a night of laughter that did not touch her eyes. The king frowned. Her, a guru? Dattatreya nodded. She taught me, he said, what even saints struggle to learn. The courtesan looked at the men outside her door, men who swore love and paid for forgetting. And she said with a tired smile, everyone comes here to buy happiness. No one comes here to understand loneliness. Then she laughed softly, and the laugh sounded like freedom. I was waiting for them to fill me, she said, and I realized they cannot. They are emptier than I am. Dattatreya turned to the king. From her, I learned detachment, he said. When you stop expecting the world to complete you, the world loses its power to break you. The king stood frozen, because his whole life had been expectation. They passed a small child playing with dust, drawing circles that meant nothing and everything. The child looked up, smiled, then returned to play. No ambition, no anxiety, no performance. The king stared, almost jealous. Dattatreya said, from the child, I learned presence. He watched the child's hands move with total attention. The child is not in yesterday, he said. It is not in tomorrow. It is not even in I and mine. He looked at the king. But you, he whispered, live everywhere except here. The king's lips parted, but no words came. For the first time, he realized his mind had been absent from his own life. The king finally spoke, voice raw. All this is beautiful, but how does it save me? Dattatreya looked at him, and in that gaze, there was neither pity nor superiority, only truth. Nothing I say can save you, Dattatreya replied. I am not your savior. The king stiffened. Dattatreya continued, quiet and relentless. You have built your own identity like a fortress, and now you are suffocating inside it. He walked closer, just one step. You asked me who my guru is, he said. I will tell you the real answer. The king held his breath. Dattatreya's voice became almost a chant. Everything is my guru, because I stopped arguing with life. A long silence. Then Dattatreya added, softer. Your suffering is not because the world is cruel. Your suffering is because you refuse to see. They stood again beneath the open sky. The king's crown felt heavier than ever. He whispered, initiate me. The ministers leaned in, expecting a ritual, a mantra, a secret syllable that would buy liberation. Dattatreya smiled, and the smile was frightening in its simplicity. There is no initiation, he said. No ceremony can do what awareness must do. The king's voice cracked. Then what do I do? Dattatreya pointed to the king's chest. Watch, he said. Watch your anger rise. Watch your desire sharpen. Watch your fear invent stories. Watch your pride build walls. The king trembled. And then he asked. Dattatreya's eyes shone like moonlight on a blade. Do not become them. A pause. You are not the wave, Dattatreya whispered. You are the ocean. You are not the weather. You are the sky. You are not the thought. You are the one who sees the thought. The king's breath slowed. Something in him unclenched. The world did not change, but the king's relationship with the world shifted, like a locked door turning on silent hinges. The king bowed, not to Dattatreya's body, but to what Dattatreya represented: freedom. Dattatreya did not accept disciples. He did not build institutions. He did not leave behind a throne of teachings. He left something far more dangerous: a mirror. And then he walked away, barefoot, as if the earth itself was his road and his refuge. The king returned to his palace. The ministers returned to their arguments. The city returned to its noise. But the king could sleep that night because the hunger had finally met its answer. Not in a book, not in a ritual, not in a man, but in the realization that the universe is always teaching. The wind is always whispering. The river is always moving. The moon is always watching, and you always have a choice: to remain asleep inside your own story, or to wake up and become the witness.